Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Meet the Preacher Season 2. This is Season 2, but we are still proceeding with the same format in terms of our episodes. So you are watching Season 2 with Episode 21. So tonight, I want to thank everybody that continues to watch the show, continues to support the show. We have a whole new, incredible gospel legends, male and female, that we are going to interview in this new season. So tonight, as you sit down and relax, please gather your family because we have another incredible, powerful speaker that's coming up. Please get your coffees, get your teas, and come with me. Let's meet the man behind the pulpit. The book of Hebrews 13 verse 7, the Bible says, "Remember your leaders, those who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith." Ladies and gentlemen, this passage of scripture is a tribute to men and women that have walked before us and led and taught the word of God to us with integrity and faith. These are men and women of God that can say without a doubt, "I have fought the good fight, I have run the race, and I have kept the faith." On tonight's show of Meet the Preacher, I have somebody that I consider a great and a strong example of what a servant leader should be. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the one and only Bishop Desmond Petersen.
Oh,
Thank you so much and welcome to the show, Bishop.
thank you, my dear brother. It's so good to be here with you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for...
Thanks to the audience, and we're looking forward to a good time.
I am so appreciative of this incredible sit down with you. I'm so appreciative of you sharing this moment with me. I want to thank my brother, Pastor LJ Haskins, for making this interview a possibility. Bishop, again, welcome to the show. And just tell us, who is Bishop Desmond Petersen? Are you married, single, divorced, children, grandchildren? Who's Desmond Petersen?
Well. Yes, I am Desmond Petersen, the eldest of my own family, eldest of 8 children, married for 44 years to one wife. God has blessed me with the most beautiful wife.
Yes, sir.
Helpmeet. God has blessed me with 2 outstanding children,
Yes, sir.
Athena and Clayton. And out of Athena, married to Ruwain Pillay, and out of that marriage, my 2 beautiful princesses, Riley and Sloan. My son is married and lives in Cape Town, and out of that marriage, a beautiful grandson by the name of Lex Petersen.
Wow.
And so I am blessed, married, yes, and happily married and blessed in my marriage.
Yes.
And we thank God for that.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, Bishop, the church that you started, Mount Carmel Ministries International, is situated in El Dorado Park. Were you born and bred in El Dorado Park?
No, I I was born in Noordgesig, 1954. 1963, my parents then moved from Noordgesig to Rivoli. We were some of the first residents in Rivoli. Yeah, grew up in Rivoli, right. And where I schooled at TCS Racing. Later on, schooled in Rivoli High, and we were the first Standard 6 students,
yes,
with the late Mr. Magadi. And so that is where I come from, and grew up in Rivoli, where I thoroughly enjoyed our upbringing.
Wow. So how many siblings did you have, or do you have?
I'm the eldest of 8, the
Wow.
eldest of 8 children, 5 brothers and 3 sisters.
Wow.
And up until now, I've lost 2 brothers and 1 sister.
Yes, sir.
There's 3 brothers left and 2 sisters.
All right. was actually saying offline before we started, your brother taught me, I can't remember what subject, I think it was science or something, Mr. Petersen at Oakdale many years ago.
That's Mark, yes.
Mark Petersen.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's beautiful to hear, man of God. Please tell us, how did you get born again? Who led you to the Lord?
In 1976,
Yes.
now I was a young man that had to leave school very, very early because my dad took ill
Yes.
and was not able to work. And the neighbor came and said they were looking for a young man at a factory to work and assist. And of course, being the eldest, I was just told to go and work in order to assist my mum. We were then only 7 children. And in 1970, went out to start working. Did not complete my schooling career, which was very disappointing for me. Nevertheless, the need at home was great.
Wow.
And so 1970 went out to start working, was introduced to a bit of a rough life, exposed to factory life and various unpleasant things that I learned. Some things that I'm not happy and proud about, but it is in the past.
Yes, sir.
My late grandfather introduced us to a church in New Clare, number 63 Cruces Avenue,
Sure.
a church called the Assemblies of God Church.
Yes, sir.
Assemblies of God was pastored by the late Pastor Robert Jacobs.
Yes, sir.
And in 1976, now in our home, there were always wayside Sunday schools
Yes.
by the Baptist church. So our home was always used for Sunday school and short little youth and church activities. But my grandfather came and said, listen, sorry to the Baptist people. We were still great friends,
Yes.
loved them to bits. In fact, in 75, I went to Cape Town and was challenged in Cape Town by the late Pastor Henny Bass, a Baptist preacher. Very, very powerful preacher. Challenged my life in Cape Town. December, we went there for a holiday. And I'll never forget, he preached a sermon where we went up to the mountain to go and have a braai, and he cast the light in front of him,
Yes, sir.
throwing his shadow behind him.
Oh.
And he said, if Christ is in front of you, your past will be behind.
Wow. Wow.
He then turned around using the same light, and he said, if Christ is behind you,
Come on.
this time my shadow was in front
Wow,
of me.
Wow.
And left me there. I didn't make a decision. However, it was a very serious challenge that stuck with me, and came back to Johannesburg, back into the Assemblies of God Church on the 11th of February 1976,
Yes, sir.
11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, 63 Cruces Avenue. Pastor Jacobs preached a sermon. And the title of the sermon was, there's someone here today that is a round peg in a square hole, or a square peg in a round hole. I was challenged in that service, and later on, when the altar call was made, I was the only man to go to the front. My dear brother in the church from Durban, who is pastoring today, Pastor Michael Lubby, still in the Assemblies of
Yes,
God,
sir. Yes, sir.
was the man that led me to the Lord under the direction of Pastor Jacobs.
Wow. Wow. What a-
63 Cruces Avenue, 1976. So you must not forget, I'm a riot child.
Man of God, I'm so taken up by the way you remember stuff, dates, years. That's incredible, sir.
I believe that if you cannot recall the day, the time and the place, then there probably wasn't such a date.
All right, if you can't recall the day that you got born again.
Yes. Remember when we were born into this life, you only got the information. You were only told that by your parents and those around you.
Yes, sir.
And so you had to accept that.
Yeah.
But when I was born again, that is where I can give you more detail.
Wow.
The 11th of February, 1976, 63 Cruces Avenue at 11 o'clock service.
Come on now, and even the sermon title.
Everything. The preacher, I can tell you what the preacher wore even that day.
Oh, man. It's phenomenal, sir.
Yeah.
So now you are married to the beautiful Pastor Beverly Petersen.
Yes.
How and where did you guys meet? Who asked who out?
There's always a story and then there's the truth. And
Yes,
my wife will have her version and I will have my version. But the more accurate version was I was the youth leader at the Assemblies of God Church.
Yes, sir.
And one day in our church was a fellow brother by the name of Norman Prinsloo. Norman Prinsloo visited a home in Stateless Street,
Yes, sir.
number 202 Adam Flats.
Oh.
It is my brother in the youth with me, Norman Prinsloo.
Right.
Norman Prinsloo was seeing a young lady by the name of Esther Prinsloo. Esther was Bosch.
Right, okay.
Everybody knew the Bosches in Stateless Street.
Right.
Nevertheless, Norman just told me his girlfriend had a sister by the name of Beverly. I had forgotten her name at the time. And then we arranged for Norman to invite his girlfriend and his girlfriend's sister to a youth meeting.
Oh.
Faithful friend and brother
Yes.
came to the youth that night with his girlfriend and his girlfriend's sister.
Oh.
And he introduced me to a young lady by the name of Beverly.
Wow.
It was still dark, and I couldn't see her as much as I would have liked to do a quick inspection.
Yes, sir.
However, I know that she was wearing a white skirt and she had on a pink blouse and a beautiful red rose. And I met her for the first time. By then, I'd forgotten Norman's girlfriend's name, but I remembered Beverly.
Okay. Yes, sir.
The night I saw her then, later on when everything became a bit more visible, I knew that this was going to be my wife one day.
Wow. Wow.
I knew it instinctively.
Wow. In the dark, you knew it.
As I said, it became a bit more visible.
Right.
But when I saw her clearly, she was exactly what I had prayed and thought about and even asked the Lord for. Fitted this description to the T.
To the T. Wow. Wow. And so you asked her out? And
No. I had to be very careful. Remember, I'm the youth leader. I had to behave myself in a professional manner.
Yes, sir.
And so, by the way, that night, what made that even more attractive for me, because she and her sister would sing together. And so they rendered an item in our youth meeting. I said, oh God, it's okay. It's enough. It's enough.
Sealed.
The deal is done.
Wow, man.
However, I tried to arrange for another appointment after that. I met her, but she then made it very clear that she was not interested in any relationship. She made it very, very clear.
Playing hard to get.
Well, I don't know if she played hard to get, but I enjoyed that because I didn't also want somebody that you could just flip your fingers and she would be ready. So I actually liked that about her. Spoke of her character. But she was very clear that she wasn't interested in a relationship. And something interesting happened. I said to her, it's quite okay if you don't want to be in a relationship, but is it okay if we will at least be friends?
Yes, sir.
She said, yes, we can be friends. And I said to her, I promise you, as a friend, I will be on your wedding day. I'll be present.
Yes, sir.
And the rest is history.
Oh man, what a beautiful story, man. and that's the fact.
That is the
Pastor,
fact.
Pastor
Yes.
Bev has her own version.
She would have her own version, but I think that is as close and as accurately to the truth as I possibly can.
Yes,
On the
sir.
21st of June, 1980, was our great day
Wow.
when we got married
Beautiful.
in the nuclear church. Of course, she was from the AFM church,
Yes, sir.
and she came over to my church.
Wow, that's beautiful, sir. Thank you so much for sharing that, Bishop. So the ministry that you started in El Dorado Park, Mount Carmel Ministries, as we know it today, please take us on a little bit of a journey on how it started. Did you start it on a stoop or in your living room or in a classroom? I'll ask you a little bit more questions on that a little bit later on. But just take us on a journey on how Mount Carmel Ministry started.
Well, I said earlier on that I got saved in the Assemblies of God Church. Our family was in the Assemblies of God Church for 23 years. Whilst when we got married, my wife and I then moved into the house of our late pastor there in Nuclear, the same church where I got saved. We were then building Faith Temple Church in those years.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so the house was ready for our pastor to move in. And because he loved me, I was his son. And he gave me the opportunity to move into the house in Nuclear. So I lived in the same house as my predecessor, my pastor, Pastor Jacobs. We lived there for 5 years. By this time, Faith Temple was completed. The Lord had blessed me. I purchased a piece of land in Bushkoppies and started building a house there. Lived in Nuclear, and then we were in the church and very, very active and busy in the church in Nuclear. My pastor was in El Dorado Park, and the church grew. God blessed us there. We then started another branch in Rivoli, and of which I was appointed. And then we all moved to El Dorado Park, where the church was the church in El Dorado Park in those years. On the 2nd of February 1992, I was the only young man that the late Pastor Jacobs ordained. He had many sons, but I am the only one that Pastor Jacobs has ordained as a co-pastor on the 2nd of February 1992.
Yes, sir.
During the month of June, my pastor passed on to be with the Lord.
Yes, sir.
It was then my responsibility to bury my pastor, which was at that time the biggest, greatest challenge of my life. As a matter of fact, when he died, I said, I wonder who's going to preach his funeral. He's such a big man. And in my mind, I thought, well, there are people like Pastor Lafoy, Pastor Harold Prince, and all those big names, leaders in the Assemblies of God. And when we got together with the family said to me, thou art the man.
Wow.
You will have to bury him. I went into shock. Immediately, couldn't believe that I had to preach my own pastor's funeral.
Wow.
Incidentally, I went into a fast from that minute.
Yes, sir.
And of course, we buried my pastor. And unfortunately, things didn't work out going forward. That was my greatest disappointment, because Faith Temple was my church, the only church I ever knew.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Never had an intention to start or visit any other church. And unfortunately, things just didn't work out. And during November that same year, we were basically out of a church. And it was my intention to go to the AFM church in Nuclear. And I reasoned this way. I said, well, if I married a young lady from the AFM church in Nuclear,
Yes, sir.
the church should be good enough for me to make that my church. And because Pastor Jacobs had ordained me, many of the people came to my home and they said, well, you are responsible for us. Pastor Jacobs ordained you. We're not going anywhere, but we are going with you. I wrestled with the Lord. And then on the 25th of December 1992, there were so many people and I had no choice, basically. And so somebody offered us a factory there in Devland. And on the 25th of December 1992, I said, well, let's just get together and see what is going to happen.
Yes, sir.
Lo and behold, to my surprise, 100 people pitched up.
The first day.
The first day, the first time. I'd never met with the people before that, apart from a few leaders.
Yes, sir.
And that day, 100 people turned up in a borrowed factory. Then I didn't know what to do after that, because here I thought, well, there'll be 10 or 15 people pitching up just for fellowship.
Yes, sir.
And so when I saw the amount of people pitching up, I realized that I had a challenge on my hands. I then immediately went back to our home in Bushkoppies, where we then started having meetings. Now remember, that takes place on the 25th of December.
Yes, sir.
Very soon it's going to be the 1st of January, and we would normally have traditionally an old year's service or a new day's service, whatever we call it. And in our home in Bushkoppies, we had the first midnight service on the 31st of December, 1992. Then we served communion and ministered to whoever was there.
Yes, sir.
We then continued in my home for a couple of weeks after that. And then people just didn't stop coming. We then managed to move into a classroom illegally. We took advantage because the schools were closed. But some of the people in Extension 6 managed to get a classroom open, and we squatted there for a while until we managed to get permission. And then we filled one classroom, and then we had to get another classroom, and we had to get another classroom. And at the same time, spoke to the Lord and asked the Lord to help me in this situation. You must understand, up until that time, we did not even have a name for the church.
Wow.
And because people were excited and kept on coming, we immediately started applying for the use of the Blue School Hall.
Yes, sir.
We were discouraged because the news and the information that went around, they said, no, that school never rents their hall out for churches. No church has ever occupied the Blue School Hall. And everybody tried to discourage me from trying to get hold of the school hall. I said to the people that was now with me at the school, I said to them, we make one rule, that every time you drive past the school hall, you open your window and you stretch your
Yes,
hand
sir.
out
Yes, sir.
and you claim that school hall. So you would drive behind people, and if you didn't know they belonged to us, you would just see a hand flashing out, and you knew, well, that was one of us. God gave me favor, met with the school principal, and lo and behold, the man was as meek as a lamb.
Wow.
And he said to me, Pastor Petersen, we will apply for you to get, make use of the school hall. We have to go through all the red tape with the Department of Education. And in February of 1991, God blessed us. We got the use of the Blue School.
Beautiful. Oh,
The church just exploded and grew exponentially.
wow. Wow. And so from the Blue School, how did you acquire the land where the church is currently situated? Was it easier getting land those years with, the ANC, solely ANC government? Or was it just as difficult as it is for us to get land these days?
Well, I was surrounded with a lot of good men around me, and a group of church members that you could virtually just do anything with. I took the team and I sent them out, and I said, now we go in all directions. We look for any piece of land anywhere.
Yes, sir.
There was a piece of land in Extension 9 where it's next to a school, and it seemed like they were using the area for dumping. And I earmarked that piece of land, and later on they said, no, that land was not available. There was a piece of land offered to us in Extension 9 where Pastor Carl Hendricks built Crystal Ministries.
Yes,
I refused that land because it was too small for a vision that God had given me. So I didn't want that piece of land.
Oh.
We ran around all over looking for land, and I discovered on the map of El Dorado Park that behind ShopRite and Checkers, there's a piece of land that was designated for recreational purposes.
Oh.
It was one piece of land, but I noticed that next to that piece of land, there were 3 other portions
Yes, sir.
of land. What I did, I started going on that piece of land. Every morning at 5 o'clock in the heart of winter,
Wow. Yes, sir.
I would go and walk there and pray on that land.
Oh.
And that went on for many weeks. One day I took the church with me, and I took them there to go and do a prayer walk on the same piece of land where Mount Carmel is built today. And we claimed and asked the Lord for that piece of land.
Wow.
So we started applying for that land, and when our application was in, at the time I was working for a company called Rand Envelope,
Yes, sir.
and on my way to work, because I was a senior manager, on my way to work every morning, I would go past the government office somewhere in Braamfontein
Yes, sir.
to keep track of where my application was.
Oh.
Every morning. They got tired of me visiting that office. You had to complete a visitor's register. Eventually they said, don't let that man still complete the register because he's going to be here tomorrow again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so we walked and trusted the Lord for that piece of land. Then I got one letter where they offered me one piece of land. And they said they could sell us that piece of land, but I was not allowed to apply for the land in the name of a church because the land was zoned recreational.
Yes.
So I applied for the land and I said, well, I want to build a youth center.
Yes, sir.
Thinking to myself, I will build a youth center, but there will be a youth hall in there. And we'll use the hall for church and the church for a hall and whatever.
Yes, sir.
And then suddenly, whilst I had the promise of a piece of land, stand number 446, the ANC government wrote back to me and said, sorry, they cannot let me have the land because the ANC had now placed a moratorium on the sale of land throughout the country.
Wow.
I went back to the office and I said, sir, I cannot accept that you're now telling me that you have to disqualify or cancel
Yes, sir.
the purchase of that land. I've got one letter that you've promised me, and the only thing I did was I asked that you people would consider giving me an additional piece of land for the vision that I had. And there was a slight delay, and during that delay they came and said they cannot sell the land to me. I insisted and persisted. I said, I'm not giving up. I've got a letter that you've promised me the land, and I'm not giving up. If I were you, I would better give me the land, or else I will cause a lot of problems.
Wow.
They tried to discourage me. So one day, I went back to the office and I said to the gentleman there, I said, sir, I will not take bad or negative news to our congregation. I'm going to make you a promise today. I'm going to bring 4 bus loads of people to your office in Braamfontein. I'm going to bring 4 bus loads of the congregation, and I will allow you the privilege of addressing the congregation and telling them that the land is no longer available.
Wow.
Because I told them, we've got the land. We're only waiting to sign documentation and pay. I'm not going back to that congregation with negative news.
Wow.
The man thought I was joking, and I was dead serious, by the way. He called me up and he said to me, Pastor Petersen, are you serious? Will you do what you said you will do? I said to him, watch me.
Yes, sir.
Watch me. After a couple of days, he said, can we have a meeting with you? I said, don't worry, I'm there every day, as you know.
Yes, sir.
And then they offered me the piece of land. And I reminded them that I had applied for an additional site,
Yes, sir.
2 stands next to each other. And he said to me, sir, now you're pushing it a bit. I said, I'm pushing it. And sir, I will not stop pushing.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
After a number of weeks, I still went to the office every day
Yes, sir.
because I wanted to know exactly where my application was. Sometimes they said the application was in Pretoria. I made friends with people in Pretoria that I didn't know, that I never saw, just to track where our application is, because I know in our country forms and files have a habit of disappearing, and it would cost you a lot of money to find the form or the application again. So I knew at any given time where our application was.
Wow.
And so they gave me the piece of land, and I said, I'm waiting for another piece of land. After a few weeks, they called me in and they said, sir, we now have the adjacent piece of land that you can also purchase. I said, great, that's wonderful. They gave me the price, And I was so excited to pay the amount of money that was stipulated for the 2 pieces of land.
Yes, sir.
This was very exciting for me at the
Yes,
time,
sir.
because a few weeks after that, they called me again.
Yeah.
They said, "Sir, please, Pastor Petersen, can you come in? There's been a mistake on the purchase of the land." I said to him, "Sir, please just be very careful what you tell me, because I will not accept a mistake, and again you will tell me that I cannot have the land. If you have made a mistake that can be corrected with me coming in, I'll be happy to do so." He said, "No, sir, come in, come in." And when I went in, they said, "The mistake we made, we gave you the price of 1 piece of land, but that was really the price for 2 pieces of
Wow.
land." I said, "Have you got more land?" And the rest is
incredible.
history. We purchased that. By this time, Mount Carmel had grown. We bought that land cash.
Come on now.
Then there was an adjacent piece of land on the left-hand side. So remember now, we've purchased 2 stands,
Yes, sir.
and there's another stand which is a business stand.
Right.
The business stand was owned by a man by the name of Joe. Joe's Truck and Panel Beaters, a businessman in Bosmont.
Right.
And I made inquiries who that stand belonged to. And people told me, "Oh, you're wasting your time to get land from Joe." At this time, I went to Rhema Bible School,
Yes, sir.
because I was now getting ready to go into full-time ministry. Went to Bible school, and I looked for Joe there in Bosmont. Discovered Joe was the owner of the 3rd piece of land next to ours. And Joe, the pedal beater in Bosmont, I went there and I decided to go without an appointment,
Yes, sir.
because I always felt confident that if I speak to anybody long enough, they will begin to listen to what I had to say.
Yes, sir.
And so I went in to meet Joe in his workshop in Bosmont, in the main road in Bosmont.
Yes, sir.
And I went and I said to him, "Joe, my name is Desmond Petersen. I'm a born-again Christian. I want to tell you who I am." And he said to me, "Well, why would I want to know who you are?" I said, "If you let me, you'll quite agree that you have to know who I am." I started talking to Joe, told him about the fact that I am a born-again child of God, and I have a passion for the Lord's work and a passion to do the Lord's work, to do youth work and community work.
Yes, sir.
And so Joe kept on listening to me, and later on he said, "Stop, let's go to my office." His office was upstairs in the building.
Come on.
Workshop at the bottom. He invited me upstairs, offered me a cup of tea. He said to me, "Sit down." He said, "Carry on talking. I want to hear more about you." And so I continued to tell Joe about the vision that I had.
Yes, sir.
Joe then asked me to keep quiet. He picked up his phone and he phoned his lawyer. His lawyer's name is Chunilau. Chunilau.
Right.
And I overheard the conversation between Joe and the lawyer. The lawyer is situated in Fordsburg. And this is what he said. He said, "Chunilau, I have a young man here, and I'm quite impressed with what he has to say. Please prepare the documents and sell him the land there in El Dorado Park.
Wow.
Don't charge him for the land, but let him pay only the outstanding
Come on.
rates and taxes that we did not pay.
Yes, sir.
And please let him have an appointment with you, sell him the land. The rest is history.
Oh, man.
So when I walked out there, I knew.
Come on.
God had blessed us. 3 pieces of land, adjacent one to the other. And another miracle happened.
Please share, sir.
On the far right of our property, there was another piece of land. Now, all 3 pieces of land measures 40 meters.
Yes, sir.
So we had 40, 40, 40. The other piece of land was owned by a church in El Dorado Park. And that piece of land was 50 meters. I immediately inquired who the owners of that land was. I remember the pastor's wife's name was Gwen. She was teaching at a school in El Dorado Park. I later heard that they wanted to sell that piece of land.
Yes, sir.
And so I went to go and meet the lady. I took Pastor Michael Bobby with me.
Yes,
We went to go and see the lady at the school. Then an interesting development took place. The Muslim community wanted to buy that particular piece of land. And I heard that they were going to put up a mosque
Cool.
right next to
Next
this
to the
piece of
Yes,
land.
sir.
And I said, over my dead body, would I allow a mosque to come up next to our church? I then had a meeting with the lady and her husband, Gwen. And I said to them, you are Christians. You cannot sell the land to the Muslim community to build a mosque.
Yes, sir.
I will pay you any amount of money, but give us the first option to buy that piece of land the day when you want to sell it.
Yes, sir.
So we in the interim started building the youth center is where Mount Carmel is. And because that whole area is waterlogged, we discovered that we had to dig 3 meters into the ground, and there you had to build a ring beam
Wow.
for a building to come up there because of the water.
Because of the war. Yes, sir.
At that time, my vision was to build 3 levels.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to build this building with the hall in the center, and on the top a sports hall.
Yes, sir.
And so what I did when we dug the foundation of the now Mount Carmel building, in the ground you had to put, we spent 250,000 rand on the steel alone that went into the foundation. 250,000 rand in 1993, 94, still a lot of money today, but was a lot of money then.
Yes, sir.
So I invited the previous owners of the land, and I said to them, I just want you to see what you're going to have to do when you want to build where your land is. Because that side, there is more water than where we are. And I did ask the Lord to forgive me because my motive was to discourage them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I did ask the Lord to forgive me. They came back and they said, Pastor Petersen, are you still interested in the land? I said, sure I am.
Yes, sir.
At that time, something happened in Klipspruit where a certain church had problems, and that church was now going to be sold. And they said to me, if you give us 250,000 rand for this piece of land, we will buy it and we are able to purchase the land in Klipspruit. Pastor Petersen, have you got the money, and how will you pay us for this land? I said, I'll pay you cash, of course.
Oh, come on now.
What do you think?
Yes, sir.
But you know what? We did not have a cent. We did not have a cent. 250,000 rand was a lot of money for the land because they did not even pay 25,000 rand.
Wow.
But I reasoned this way. I said, I will pay 250,000 rand, not so much for the land, but I'll pay 250,000 rand not to have a mosque next to us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Needless to say, I was criticized for that. Pastor Michael, Bobby, and myself went and we started making arrangements, but we did not have the money.
Yes, sir.
So at that time, we applied to the bank for a loan to build Mount Carmel as it is standing there today. But because God had been blessing us, we started building, and the building came up rapidly. We built that building cash out of our pocket, right up to roof height.
Wow.
Our loan application was in at the bank, and I must tell you, I had some very, very influential people that assisted me
Yes, sir.
at F&B Bank. You also know that the banks didn't borrow money to churches.
Yes, sir.
But I tell you, we enjoyed God's favor. We had some highly influential people that would plead our case. So we didn't apply for a bond or a home loan or whatever the case. We applied for a special loan. It is what they termed it, a special loan. And so I'm saying that because now everything seems to come together at the same time.
Yes,
This land now becomes available. I don't have the money to pay for it. This building is coming up. We're using all our money building cash up to roof height, and the loan still hasn't come through. The people started getting impatient for me to pay them. And so I needed a bit more time.
Yes, sir.
I then decided to look for loopholes in their contract.
Yes, sir.
I did ask God to forgive me though.
Forgiveness, yes, sir.
I found a lot of loopholes in their contract, and I kept on pointing out their loopholes, but I didn't give them all the loopholes at the same time. I gave them one loophole at a time, because every loophole equated to me getting more time. In the meantime, this side I'm pushing the bank for the money, and this side the people are putting pressure for the property. The other side, incidentally, I must add, the Muslim people had offered them 300,000 rand for the land. I offered them 250,000. And so they were knocking at the door. They said, well, remember, we offered you 300. I said, you must be ashamed of yourself, Christians, selling this to the Muslims.
Yes, sir.
I did ask for forgiveness.
For forgiveness, amen.
Nevertheless, God in a supernatural way undertook for us. The loan came through, and we were able to take 250,000 rand we made a R1 million loan from the bank. We paid them the 250,000 for the land, and we had money to put the roof on our building. God laid in my heart at that time to put the roof on the church for a church in Extension 6. I watched an old pastor struggling to complete a church and put the roof up, and the Lord laid in my heart to bless him, Pastor Kruger, Colorado Park. And I then ordered and had the same company that constructed the roof in our church to let them put the roof on for their church. And so God bless them as well. And so we thank God that He enabled us to do that at the same time. I was really happy to do that because I watched this old pastor struggling for years on end. And so we blessed him by putting on the roof, complete roof on the church.
Well, Bishop, I have to say that your history is so captivated, how you've navigated through the struggles of putting up a ministry, putting up a church. It is so incredible because we as young pastors coming up can just learn from what you've been through. And I know that in your time you fought a lot of Goliaths for us as well as young pastors coming up. But thank you so much for sharing that.
We give God praise.
Before you went into full-time ministry, what was your profession? Where did you work? What did you do?
Again, I said earlier on that I was a youngster that started working at the age of 15. First of all, for a company called Tension Envelope. It was a company where I had to cut those big rolls of paper into sheets of paper.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And because I worked for my parents, my mom, I worked in this company doing that. But at the same time, I so much wanted to learn the printing trade.
Yes, sir.
And so I held down 2 jobs. The one was what I was employed for, and the other one where I wanted to learn the printing trade. Worked for that company for 6 years, and one of the directors from that company then started a company called Rand Envelope.
Yes, sir.
By this time, I had learned the printing trade at Tension Envelope, and so they employed me to run the printing department at this company called Rand Envelope. Rand Envelope, I enjoyed tremendous favor, learned the trade, and I was my boss's son, more than a worker.
Wow.
I held the keys to his house, and I worked. Growing up, the only thing I was taught by my dad was to work hard and be obedient and respectful.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so I learned to do more other things in the company. And because my boss loved me dearly, I was given the responsibility of now being the foreman of the printing department of Rand Envelope. God gave me grace and favor. I learned to manage the envelope store for the same company.
Yes,
so added to my profile was now the foreman of the printing department, and I became the warehouse manager. And because the warehouse worked hand in hand with the dispatch, they gave me the dispatch area to handle as well.
Come on. Yes, sir.
So here I am, the boss's son, handling the printing department, the dispatch area, the storeroom. Then I was also the liaison between the company and the printing industry union.
Wow.
I was the only man that could facilitate between the union and the directors and the staff. Wherever staff members had to be disciplined, you had to do it via the unions.
Yes, sir.
I was the man that could do the facilitation between the directors of the company and the unions and the staff.
So you had a very high profile.
I had one of the highest profiles. I was the only young man, and I was always the youngest manager of all the managers in my company. I was the only one that was welcomed or invited into a director's meeting to give them advice, and I was the youngest.
Wow.
And so I did all the engagement, all the employment of the staff.
Yes.
And so what I did naturally, if you were a member of Mount Carmel Ministries, you could get a job where I worked.
Empowering the congregation there. Yes, sir.
Yes. But that is what I did. I was in the printing industry for a company called Ren Abloh.
Amen.
Worked there for 19 years.
Yes, sir.
19 years.
Before going full time into ministry.
Yes, yes.
Bishop, the Mount Carmel choir was an incredible choir. I remember they also released some CDs back in that day. Was still CDs. What impact do you think they had within the ministry and within the community of El Dorado Park?
Yeah, the choir certainly was one of the highlights of our ministry. Well loved. It attracted young people from all over. Every second young person that you spoke to or heard wanted to sing in the Mount Carmel Youth Choir under the direction of a young man by the name of Simon Court. Simon lived with us, and God had raised him up, and he always had the gift and talent. Simon is also a pastor's child.
Yes, sir.
And that choir, I tell you, they were, I think, one of the most known and sought after,
Yes, sir.
spoken about choirs that did us proud and made an impact in the lives of many, many, many young people.
Yes, sir.
Sang in the city hall, and we went to Cape Town, and my goodness me, wherever you went, people would identify and talk about the Mount Carmel Youth Choir.
Wow.
The level of excellence
Yes, sir.
was remarkable. He certainly introduced a new dimension to choirs, and I loved every bit of it because I'm a music lover myself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And this choir was just excellent. Made an impact in the lives. Many young people would leave their churches to come to the choir, and then later on just belong to the church. And then later on, families would belong to the church as a result of the choir. The choir certainly played a tremendous role in the exponential growth of the ministry itself.
Wow. Yeah, they had an incredible impact within not only in El Dorado Park, because we in Annandale had Mount Carmel CDs. Remember, one of the first ones was the Jubilee albums. So, and it's also because of your mentorship over that choir. And so we really here to say thank you for that indelible input that you've had over many years and over a lot of young children's lives.
Well, we give God praise for that. The Jubilee conferences that we had certainly was one of our flagship events.
Yes, sir.
That we had international preachers and artists, people. I went to the States one year and brought Jackie McCulloch to this country for the first time.
Yes, sir.
God gave me tremendous favor there in New York. I met her there and invited her to come.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was actually going to speak about that event that you had because I was still a young boy. I remember you set up a tent next to the building.
Yes.
Still a young boy, and we were bussed through from Annandale to Aldous.
Wow.
And listening to Bishop Jackie McCulloch.
Jackie McCulloch.
I even listened to her today, still on YouTube. But you the one that introduced her to us.
I brought her to this country for
And
the
you-
first time.
Yes, sir. Phenomenal speaker. Please tell us, Bishop, what is the Villa of Hope? How did it start and how is it going today?
During my work and involvement in the community in El Dorado Park, I drove past the place where the houses, the Villa of Hope is still today. And there was a strange compound there in Mansfield. And I, being very inquisitive, I wanted to know what is going on in a cordoned off
Yes, sir.
area.
Yes, sir.
I went in there one day, and there I discovered there was 25 houses that belonged to the Rand Water Board.
Yes, sir.
And during the apartheid years, the staff, European staff, lived and worked for the Rand Water Board, and they lived there in a very protected environment. Their children were bused into school, their bread and meat was delivered, very protected. White people living in Mansfield, to cut the whole story short. And when apartheid ended, a lot of them ran and left, took their package, and the place stood there, and the place was vandalized.
Yes, sir.
I do not know how long, but every time I would drive past the place, I would stop in and go and have a look. And I saw, but these were beautiful houses, well-built houses. But it was, I tell you, it was vandalized. I spoke to the Lord and I said, Lord, please give me this place. I have a passion to rehabilitate battered women and abused children. That was my passion.
Yes, sir.
I didn't know where to start applying for this place. And I discovered after about a year, running around trying to find out who the place belongs to, and I discovered some of the people that lived, started making friends to people, and I discovered that the houses belonged to the water board, but the land belonged to Propcom.
Okay.
It took me a year to apply for the land because I had this incredible urgency and desire and passion to see that our church would then be instrumental in rehabilitating battered women and abused children.
Yes, sir.
That wasn't my forte as it was. My passion, my immediate responsibility was to pastor the church.
Yes, sir.
In our church, we had professional people like Theodore Steinbank and Crystal de Saldana. These were people that were educated in the social development.
Yes, sir.
And Theodore Steinbank, one of the men that came with me from Faith Temple, they were going to run the Better Life Center because that was going to become the social arm of the ministry.
Yes, sir.
But in order to acquire the place was a mammoth task. I, again, it took me a year to apply getting the land. I approached various high-level people, and people helped me. I gained favor with a lot of people that assisted me in going to apply for the land. They then had me to sign a lease for 20 years.
Okay.
Again, people could not believe that I managed to acquire that property. Then suddenly, after we were given the lease, all of a sudden, there was a whole lot of interest in the whole of El Dorado Park. All of a sudden, everybody was interested and everybody wanted that place.
Wow.
But God had given me favor. And so, my friend Theo, his wife, then was offered a job in the UK. And so they had to go to the UK because she was then working for the Commonwealth of London. So I knew nothing about running an NGO or a child welfare center or an orphanage.
Yes, sir.
But now I've been given this place. So I took our congregation and we started a clean-up operation.
Yes, sir.
Then I was told that you cannot have battered women and orphan children, because if the battered women's husbands would come looking for the wives or the women, they would interfere with the children. So I had to do one or the other. But again, I must say, I had no experience about an orphanage.
Yes, sir.
And so we developed going into that. And God again gave us favor. We worked hand in hand with the AFM church. God brought a man by the name of Arthur and Margie Campbell that was passionate about children's homes and orphanages. And we just worked by trial and error.
Yes, sir.
We started repairing the homes. Well, at least that I had a little bit of experience in upgrading the houses, but to run a child welfare or a child care, I had absolutely no experience. And so God brought people along into our lives. And Arthur Campbell was so passionate about this, him and his wife. His wife then qualified as a social worker, and they moved into the property. We started repairing the houses one at a time, and so they moved into the property, and we started developing and building up what we called the Villa of Hope Child Care Center. We went through tremendous problems. I had to find money and used a lot of the church's money to upgrade those houses.
Wow.
I received a lot of criticism for doing that, but I knew that the Lord would help us to turn that place into a proper children's home. And we were severely criticized at the Home Affairs. They wanted to close it on numerous occasions. My name was in the newspaper giving the children expired food. I heard they say you can go to Woolworths and Pick and Pay and get food. And I didn't know that the food reached a sell-by date. And then my name appeared in the papers that I was poisoning children. But we persevered.
Yes, sir.
I started developing such a great love for the children and listening to the abusive stories, the abuse where young children came out of homes where they were abused by their own fathers, abused by their own uncles and families. I said, God, help me so that we can help these children.
Yes, sir.
Brothers and sisters that abused each other, that didn't know what was this all about.
Yes, sir.
I can tell you so many stories. What we heard. A father abusing his 11-year-old daughter and calling all his brothers and friends to abuse his daughter to make this child know that you are just a sex object.
Oh, man. The Lord has used you mightily, Bishop.
God blessed us with that place.
Yes, sir.
We had a lot of setbacks. We had a lot of people that wanted to take advantage of getting occupation. And I said yes to everybody to try and help people. Got into a lot of trouble because of that. God then sent more and more people with passion. A woman by the name of Zorina went with, who was still running the Villa of Hope
As it
as it is today.
Wow.
They wanted to close it because they said we simply will never ever get it right to run a proper child care facility. God brought Zorina Wentworth into our lives. And by this time, we had started learning more and more. I had the Huckle family that was there, and Arthur Campbell, and many people came to us. There were a lot of assistance from the community as well. People came, and others became parents, and people came with the wrong motives. But, you know, we learned as we went along.
Yes.
Our church supported. Every bit of financial support came from Mount Carmel Ministries. The people trusted my
Leadership.
passion and leadership, that we used a lot of money in upgrading the place. I traveled abroad and I looked for sponsorship for people to adopt a home, to invest in upgrading. I got some sponsorship help here and there, and I called certain homes by the name of the churches where I got some financial support, and I had some of my friends in London, some of my friends in the United States that would give us a little bit of money here and there, and the home then started getting momentum. At the Home Affairs, every bad example was associated with the Villa of Hope in all of their offices. And years later, God turned it around, put the right people. Eventually, when you walked into the Home Affairs offices, they used the Villa of Hope as a prime example of how a children's home must be conducted and ran.
Man.
That place today is running like a well-oiled machine. It's functioning on all cylinders. I only go there as a patriarch.
Yes, sir.
I've handed it over to Zorina and the team.
Yes, sir.
They're doing a fantastic job, a great job. She's got a great team. Our children, we've had some children that was adopted to the UK, New Zealand, Australia, the Netherlands. Some wealthy families came and took some of our children. They are abroad. And I knew that somehow, I said, Lord, the next president can come out of the Villa of Hope. Lord, you will raise successful doctors and lawyers and pastors and preachers and business people, because those kids are out in New Zealand and the Netherlands and various places abroad. Not all of them.
Yes,
Some were adopted here,
Yes, sir.
but it's running like a well-oiled machine.
Incredible.
God has just been so gracious and so merciful. Today, they refer people to the Villa of Hope and they say, go and see how a child home, child care center must be run.
Wow, awesome. I don't think an hour is enough to cover everything. You've got a great, great legacy, Bishop Desmond. And again, throughout this interview, I will continue to say thank you. Meet the Preacher is all about bringing honor to our gospel legends, and there's not a lot of people that knows, maybe within El Dorado Park, but outside of El Dorado Park, there's not a lot of people that knows the depth of what you have done and how God has used you. He's used you tremendously, obviously with a lot of favor, working behind the scenes. So again, thank you so much.
God has also helped us to purchase the property in Discovery Church. There's a church, Mount Carmel
Oh,
Church there as
wow.
well.
Wow.
We purchased that from the Dutch Reformed congregation, and God has blessed us. The church in Discovery is still running today, and we give God praise for that.
Amen.
We
Amen.
give God all the praise. For my wife and I, we just give God all the praise. Without God and His Holy Spirit and a wonderful congregation, people that stood with us. Remember, you can be the greatest visionary, but if you don't have people to carry and drive the vision with you with passion and commitment and dedication, you are only a leader going for a walk. But the people supported us tremendously, tremendously, tremendously. And we thank God for that.
Now, during all this that you have experienced within ministry, was there ever a time that you thought about quitting and just becoming a normal church member?
Such a thought entered my mind, but I felt that I would love to do that at a later stage, because I also believe, and I still believe today, that the ministry must be passed on, the baton must be passed on. God must give us grace to raise young men and women in ministry.
Yes, sir.
And I believe still today, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm still of that same mindset today. Our sons and daughters must be greater than us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Our shoulders must be their platform. They must run further. They must jump higher. They must be better preachers. They must be wealthier. They must do well. They must do better than us. They must be far more successful than we were. There should be no competition between us and our sons and daughters. They must do better than us.
Yes, sir.
They must.
So you never thought about, you said the thought entered your mind.
The thought entered my mind to be in a place where we would have established many more churches, and I would just visit the churches and watching sons and daughters making strides in the ministry, running further, preaching better, doing better, going further. That is what I long to do. But also to be in a coaching and mentoring space, to encourage them, to push them further. That is still the desire of my heart and that of my wife, that young men and women must be put into the ministry. Now you must understand, the Lord said to me, I must ordain as many pastors and preachers and teachers and evangelists into the ministry as possible.
Yes, sir.
And the reason for that was, I was the only one that Pastor Jacobs ordained, and I felt that more men should have been ordained by my predecessor.
Okay.
And so that was my passion, to push young men, and I will still do that until the Lord calls me home.
Well, you still have a lot to do, sir. Bishop, looking back over your time as a senior pastor, is there anything, looking back now, is there anything that you would change as a senior pastor in ministry, or anything that you would do different looking back?
Anything that you do in life, any vision, business, or anything, when anyone looks back in retrospect, there will always be many things that you would have, should have, and could have done differently. And certainly I also have that same perspective. There are many things that I would have done differently, knowing what I know now. However, if we take the overall picture of where we find ourselves, I believe God directed and led us, and God afforded my wife and I this very special privilege and honor to carry out a small assignment,
Yes, sir.
just a small assignment in doing what God has called us to do. He's given us the vision. He's given us the provision for the vision.
Yes, sir.
And He has allowed us to hand over the baton. In Eldorado Park, we handed the baton over to Pastor Michael Bobby and his wife Carmen.
Yes, sir.
And they're doing a great job in the work of the ministry. We pray that God will bless them.
Amen.
And God will raise up more. And my trust, my hope is that they will be of the same mindset as ourselves.
Yes, sir.
Not to hold on to ministry, but to pass the baton and raise
Yes, sir.
young men, because the young men have got the energy, like Caleb and Joshua.
Mm.
Caleb said to Joshua, "Give me this mountain." When he was 85 years old, he said, "I'm still as strong today as I was 40 years ago when you and I went in to spy the land."
Yes, sir.
That we must pass on the baton. My earnest desire is to mentor and coach and remain a servant of God,
Yes, sir.
so that young men and women
Oh,
can continue
wow.
in this great work.
Beautiful.
And we thank God that He has favored my wife and I, called us into the ministry. There was no doubt about the gift and call of God in our lives.
Yes, sir.
And so we thank God. We give Him the praise, the glory, and the honor for having allowed us the privilege
Mm.
to carry out a small assignment
Amen.
by God's grace.
Bishop, how important are spiritual sons and daughters in the life of a retired pastor? Because now that you're not pastoring a church anymore, you're still in ministry. But how important is it to still have your spiritual sons and daughters in your life as a retired pastor?
One learns many things, like a normal household. Parents have their own children, and they are your children as long as they are still in the house under your parental guidance. But those children also grows up.
Yes, sir.
They will forever be your children, but as they grow up, they're also exposed to many things in the ministry and in the world and their own influences, that I have learned that the dynamics changes.
Yes, sir.
You asked me the question, how important it is?
Yeah.
Well, it may be desirable to me and important to me, but the same sentiment must come from that spiritual child.
Right.
If that child is still the same child that it was in the house,
Mm.
and will do the same things or even better, or would even remain in submission to your guidance, to your mentorship. Because remember, they grow up and they develop their own DNA as well.
That's true. That's true.
So I have come to learn that that dynamic will change in one's life.
Yes, sir.
There are other spiritual fathers, and they have a fantastic relationship with their spiritual children.
Mm.
And it is not necessarily going to be the same with every father and his spiritual children.
Yes, sir.
Not necessarily the same.
Mm.
However, you've still got to love them,
Yes, sir.
still got to pray for them, and trust the Lord that a good relationship will develop.
Yes, sir.
I am at this stage of my life leaning more to the thought of covenant children,
Yes, sir.
because I believe a covenant child can remain more committed and truthful than a spiritual child.
Oh.
But that's just me, okay? That's just me. That's just me.
Oh man, you share so much wisdom, sir. Please tell us what music other than gospel music does Bishop Desmond Petersen listen to?
My first love is jazz music. I'm a jazz lover.
Right.
If you look at my collection,
Yes, sir.
I think if I can start selling my CDs, I can retire. The next love of music for me was soul music. I
Right.
loved the Sam Cooke and all those singers, O.C. Smith and Otis Redding, and I love soul music, real good old soul music. But jazz is my first love.
Yes, sir.
Then I do love a bit of orchestral music as well,
Right.
because there are times when you've got to behave in a more diplomatic lifestyle and be a bit more gentle and listening to some good old orchestral music.
Yes, sir.
But jazz still remains the top.
Come on.
Love all the gospel music, love it to bits.
Yeah.
But jazz will still be my first love.
Yes, sir. Wow, beautiful. Now, as a retired pastor, which South African speaker, preacher, do you still enjoy listening to today? I know you probably have a list, but if you can name one or three, at least, South African preachers that you still listen, who's your favorite?
I will surprise you.
Yes, sir.
I do not listen to too many South African preachers.
Yes, sir.
I do not listen to too many international speakers.
Right.
I have the local South African preachers that I love at this stage is Apostle Eden Constance. He was a young man that I watched, and with his dad,
Yes, sir.
we would do various meetings and outreaches. I love the ministry of Eden Constance. Bishop Freddie Edwards is one of my favorite preachers.
Yes, sir.
L.J. Eskins is one of my favorite sons and preachers
Yes, powerful preacher.
that I love. I love the ministry of Pastor Leon James,
Yes, sir.
and thank God for them.
Hmm.
I do not listen to too many.
Yes, sir.
I must be honest with you. Not that I have anything against them,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, there are some of them. I love Musa Sono, who is also a personal friend of mine, that I enjoy listening to.
Now, Bishop, please tell me, what is the most memorable conference that you held at Mount Carmel that will never leave your mind, the most memorable?
I want to say, first of all our conferences were great and outstanding.
Yes, sir.
There were two. The one with Jackie McCulloch was on the top of that list. And then we had a conference one year with Bishop Archie that came with Bishop Bacon, Bishop Washington, and they all brought from their own churches some of their closest leaders in ministry. And the one conference I remember, when our youth choir and our youth was so outstanding that when those preachers that we brought, when they went back to the USA, just wanted to come back here. Our Jubilee conferences were all outstanding. It made such an impact all the local pastors, like the conferences of Rhema, ours were where they would all want to be at every one of our conferences. And one of my old friends, Pastor Benny van Rede, who has gone home to be with the Lord, said to me, some of them are only here for the food. That was okay. We serve the best food.
Yes, sir.
But it was good. It was great. Every one of them are memorable. But this particular one where we had a combination of so many sought after speakers
Yes, sir.
at our conferences, Jubilee conferences. I miss and long for that.
Yes, sir.
I'm trusting that God will raise up our sons, that they will do. But of course, things are also changing these days.
Yes,
I
sir.
think during COVID, many things changed even
Yes, sir.
in the kingdom.
Now, Professor Ronnie Moodley wrote a book, I think it was about last year, which is called The Great Exchange. This book speaks about the transferring of leadership to the next generation. So I know that you have passed on the baton to Pastor Mike Bobby, but how was that? How was it handing over the ministry? And I'm specifically talking about your emotions, what went through you handing over.
Yeah, you must understand that pastoring Mount Carmel and giving birth to the church for 27 years.
Yes, sir.
If I can describe it accurately, whilst it is a bittersweet,
Yes, sir.
during the handover ceremony, you ask yourself the question, but are you really doing the right thing? Do you really, 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 really want to hand this? Because remember, it is like a child that you've given birth to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It becomes very painful because now you've got to part with that child. Do you know what it's ultimately like? It's like cutting a limb or an arm off while you are still alive.
Wow. Come on.
It is painful, and yet, you've made the commitment, you've made the decision, you've asked the Lord and convinced everybody you're doing the right thing. But when you come away from that, it then is followed by a lot of pain after that.
Yes, sir.
And it is not easy.
Yes, sir.
It's just not easy.
There's no better explanation. Bishop, wherever I see you preaching with the eagle. What does the eagle mean to you?
The eagle is a very significant creature in my life. This is a gift that I received from Bishop Archie. I'd like to believe it's the only one in South Africa. I don't know.
I
stand to
seen.
correction.
Yes, sir.
Everybody always asks for it and want to feel it, want to see it, and I've got to watch the criminals around me.
Yes, sir.
But the eagle is a very significant bird because of its nature, its ginormous, how can I say, it's the very DNA of the eagle. First of all, the eagle soars high up,
Yes, sir.
gets away from all the clutter and the chickens and all other birds on the earth, flies high up, makes its nest very, very high.
The king of the sky.
The king of the sky rises way above the clouds, gives birth to its young up in the mountains, in the rocks, wherever he finds the highest place. And we all know how the eagle remains faithful to one partner. The eagle stays alive for about 30 to 40 years, goes back to his same nest, and when the children comes, he then, the mother eagle gives birth to the eaglets. She takes off her feathers and makes a nice, soft and cushion, a cozy nest. And one day she comes and she kicks all the feathers out because underneath is thorns.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
She put the feathers up on the thorns, and then she kicks the thorns, the feathers, and the eaglets then are being taught, today you're going to start flying. Of course, they cannot stand on the thorns, so they hop out of the nest to go and fly. But they cannot fly. They don't realize they can fly. And then she kicks them out of the nest, and as they fall down, but because they're so high, they take a long time to come down. So she goes underneath the eaglets and she lifts them up on her wings, and she takes them up. And she does this a couple of times until they realize, if I spread my wings, I can fly.
Come on. Come on.
And so she teaches them to fly.
Yes, sir.
The eagle times its prey from the air, grabs that fish out of the water, feeds her young. But here's the more significant truth about the eagle. The eagle lives for about 30 to 40 years. And when the eagle becomes old, his beak begins to curl up.
Yes, sir.
And now the eagle, because the beak is curled, the eagle cannot pack up food anymore. And so the eagle is getting old. He cannot find food for himself anymore. So the eagle flies back into its nest, and now he's going to make plans to extend his life.
Yes, sir.
So what he does, he starts chipping the beak so that the part that is curled can break off,
Yes, sir.
so that the eagle can start picking up food again. The eagle is now old, 30 years, preparing to die, but he's refusing to die. So what he does, he begins to, by this time he's lost a lot of his feathers. And now he begins to pluck some of the thinly spread feathers on his body, and he makes a nest where he's becoming a bit more comfortable.
Yes, sir.
But he's now, because he is able to start picking up food again, he makes himself comfortable in that nest, and now he begins to get food so that he can start sustaining himself. But he has to pluck some of the feathers, let go of some of the other feathers to make him comfortable and make him warm. And during this time, occasionally he goes down to get food, and he gets stronger. His feathers are beginning to grow again, and very soon that eagle is able to fly again. And it is said that when the eagle's beak starts growing sharper again, for him to gather food, he becomes stronger, and then he goes back and he lives another 30 years.
Oh my God. That's a sermon on its own.
Faithful to his original partner, has a relationship with his own children.
Come on. That's the characteristics of an eagle.
So I'm plucking the old feathers so that I can be comfortable in order to pick up spiritual food for my future growth.
Wow. Wow.
God bless you.
Man of God, you must still preach, but it feels like you've already preached to us. Bishop, I really want to thank you for sitting down and sharing this moment with me and all our viewers. We love to celebrate our gospel legends, and you've done incredible stuff, not only within Villa of Hope or with Mount Carmel, but you don't know the many lives that you have touched across the globe. So thank you so much for all that you have done. But just before we end the show tonight, I would like to ask you, when it's all said and done for Bishop Desmond Petersen, what would you like to be remembered for?
The only thing that I really would only be like or be remembered for is just to be a servant of the Lord. That's fine. Just a servant of the Lord.
In August 2021, Bishop T.D. Jakes wrote a book called Don't Drop the Mic. This book was an encouragement to younger preachers and future pastors to not give up in ministry. As you look into that camera, Bishop, what message would you like to leave with future generation leaders and up and coming young pastors to not drop the mic?
Well, we give God praise for that, and thank you for having this interview with myself. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. But young men and women that is called into the ministry, I want to say the very first rule that was applicable in my own life is that you must be sure and know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you know that God has called you. If you cannot recall the time and the place and how God called you for ministry, and you remember it as if it happened only yesterday, if you cannot remember it, then I'm afraid it was merely a desire to do so. However, if you are in ministry and you know you've been called, there will be many, many challenges. There will be many, many moments when you will experience different characters of different people, but don't be discouraged. When we look at the life of Christ and what he had gone through with those closely associated to him, the Apostle Paul, then we must understand that we will never be exempted from many challenges in life. You will experience rejection, betrayal, many, many things. People will make many promises. But we must never forget that it is God that has called us. And God will give you a vision. He'll give you the provision for the vision. There will come times when the only thing that you have to keep you stable on this road is knowing that God has called you. There will be moments of discouragement. But if you know that God has called you into ministry, you have a reference to go back and say, Lord, but you have called me for this task. I want to say the blessings in doing God's work far outweighs the challenges, the hurt, the disappointment, the pain. Pain is your platform for success. But God remains faithful. I want to encourage every young man and young woman. Every one of us goes into the ministry thinking it's going to be rosy and sunshine every day. I'm afraid not. But it is still something that I would still do over and over and over. It is the greatest call. The greatest call is to carry out the call and the plan and the purpose of God in your life. There was a time where many people here in El Dorado Park knew when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, and I prayed for him, and after that he looked for me on every occasion. I knew that his intention was to draw me into politics, and every time he called for me, I made sure that I was absent. Many people came back and said, Pastor, Madiba called you. He made mention of your name. But I knew what his motive was, because I wanted to hold on to the gift and call of God more than anything in my whole life. God bless you. Stay faithful. Make sure you have a good husband or wife that is beside you, not behind you, beside you. Make sure you have a mentor and at least one good friend that will be honest with you in the work of the ministry. God bless you. Shalom.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, the incredible, the phenomenal Bishop Desmond Petersen. We so appreciative of his time tonight on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching this incredible show. Remember, do not give up, young ministers out there. Whatever you do in this life in ministry, do not drop the mic. My name is Donovan, host. Good night. Well, that's it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching episode 21 of season 2, Meet the Preacher. Our hope is that you have been inspired, elevated, and challenged through the wisdom of this incredible speaker that we had on tonight's show. Well, before we say goodbye, I want to remind everybody to please like, share, subscribe to the channel so that you can enjoy more fruitful episodes of Meet the Preacher Season 2. Remember, if you'd like to support the show financially, please see the details on your screen and get in contact with us so that you can see how you can support the show Meet the Preacher. See you next time with the next preacher right here on Meet the Preacher. Good night.